What happens when you build a relationship on a cracked foundation? If you've been with me since the beginning, you know that I've been a Cuddlist practitioner for 8 years. And you've also come to learn that my own past pattern was attracting unavailable men. Between my personal story and my professional experience, I've held space for hundreds of married men who, despite having partners and families, confess to feeling profoundly lonely in their relationships. And that surprised me at first, because from the outside, you wouldn't expect a man with a wife and children to feel deeply alone. But when I dug into the research, I discovered something shocking. Married men with children are actually the highest demographic to report feelings of loneliness, even higher than single men. It seems counterintuitive, right? But by the end of today's episode, it's going to make a whole lot of sense. I'm pulling together what I have learned over 15 years of supporting men so that you can use those insights to build the kind of foundation that keeps your relationship not just intact, but running red hot for years to come. Please note that this episode does briefly discuss depression, violence, and suicide, so check the show notes for more details. Throw out the rules, forget the cliches. This isn't about the perfect profile or the perfect date. It's about real connection. It's time to strip away the masks, shed the stories, and drop those old patterns that no longer serve you. Tired of dating advice that doesn't fit? So are we. Welcome to Stripped, Drop Your Patterns, where conscious dating isn't about following a script. It's about embracing your whole self and attracting the kind of love that sets your soul on fire. I'm Rachel J., the connection coach and your host. Let's get real. All right. Now let's start by naming some of the common causes of relationship endings so that we can reverse engineer a different, healthier outcome. Often we hear that when relationships end due to an active choice, not by illness or car crash or other catastrophic event of circumstance, but active choice, it's because the partners grew apart or there was cheating involved or, more tragically and often unexpectedly, suicide. In the first two of these scenarios, we might say that one or both partners simply fell out of love, or maybe they fought constantly and couldn't stand to be around each other. If someone in the relationship cheats, we're apt to use pretty choice words to describe them and often the person they cheated with. And when a partner ends the relationship by taking their own life, we often seek until we find a source of blame, such as drugs or mental illness or having secrets that they felt they could no longer bear. I will note that marriages also end due to varying levels of abuse. So I want to clarify that I'm not discounting abuse as a cause for relationship termination in any way, but oftentimes that is a result of very different causality than what we're discussing today. It's only in the most gentle of these options, which is when the pair just simply fell out of love, that we're more likely to assume some level of introspection and accountability for the relationship concluding. If the ending to the relationship is more bitter and intense, it's more natural to head directly into blame mode and completely bypass any self-awareness and accountability, especially if we're talking about adultery as the cause. The point is, when we hear of a relationship ending, the tendency is often to look at and analyze the action that ended the relationship rather than to identify the root cause that led to that action. And what I'm sharing with you today is the root cause that I have seen time and time again in my extensive experience supporting men. Early on in one of my favorite movies, When Harry Met Sally, Harry, who of course is played by Billy Crystal, is telling his best friend Jess, played by Bruno Kirby, that his wife sprung a divorce on him and it turns out she was in love with somebody else. And Bruno wisely says to him in that moment, marriages don't break up on account of infidelity. It's just a symptom that something else is wrong. So now that we've named 3 of the main drivers for marriage termination, we're going to go deeper to look at the root cause of these drivers. And can you guess what it is? You've been with me long enough by now to be able to guess. It's lack of connection. So when 2 people fall out of love or fall at each other's throats, it's because they no longer share common interests or goals. They stop listening to one another, they stop seeing one another for who they are and instead who they wish they were, and they start focusing on all the perceived negative aspects rather than remembering and choosing to focus on the good ones. And when a partner cheats, and yes, there are situations where cheating happens purely for the thrill or an addiction or the person cheating is just truly an asshole, but most often what I have seen with the men that I have worked with, adultery happens when one partner is not feeling seen or valued, desired, or even liked, to be honest. And then perhaps a person comes along who reflects their goodness back to them, and that feeling of being seen lights a spark that had been dimmed. And maybe for the first time in a long time, they feel visible and like they have something to offer other than just a dual income or participation in household chores. That feeling of being interesting or desirable or worthy of attention, that is the feeling that becomes addictive to a partner who feels starved for affection in the home. And what you need to understand is that most affairs are emotional before they ever become physical. Do you know why many married people who cheat will not leave the marriage for the other person? And again, I'm going to quote When Harry Met Sally here. It's just, this is the theme for this episode. It's totally appropriate. So in the whole first half of the movie, the character Marie, who is played by Carrie Fisher, is chasing a married man. And she repeatedly says to her girlfriends, I don't think he's ever going to leave her. And Sally, who is played infamously, of course, by Meg Ryan, nobody can ever forget the scene in Cat's Deli. Sally says to her, nobody thinks he's ever going to leave her. And Marie's frequent response to that is, you're right, I know you're right. And it really is rare that the cheating partner chooses to leave because they have had an affair. And here's the reason why. Oftentimes the reason that the person cheated is not because they stopped loving their partner or because they want out, but because they felt lonely and they just needed to not feel lonely, even if it was just for a bit and even if it gets messy and does damage along the way. Often when a marriage does end because of adultery, it's because the partner who was cheated on found out and could not see another way forward. And when a partner takes their own life, it's because they feel so disconnected, not only from their partner, but from anyone they could confide in about the heaviness that they're experiencing. And that is when even more destructive coping behaviors come onto the scene. We see substance abuse, self-harm, mass violence, and suicide. As many of you are probably aware, men commit suicide approximately 4 times more often than women, and studies consistently show that loneliness is a significant risk factor for suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and death by suicide. Now remember, men are not traditionally taught that it's okay for them to have feelings, let alone to share them. So when those hard feelings come up, the impulse is to shut them down in whatever way does the job in that moment. Whether it's deflecting uncomfortable emotions with inflated, self-aggrandizing language, or using humor, or numbing with substances or sex, or practicing self-harm to counteract that feeling of numbness to life. The intention is to have something to think about, anything to think about other than the source of that pain, which is the uncomfortable emotions. So, my friends, you can see that a lack of healthy connection is at the core of our relationship breakdowns. And to be honest, lack of connection is at the core of so many other global problems, and this is why I am so passionate about helping people to feel connected in every possible way. Now, before we get to the good news, when I share with you how all this heartache can be avoided, I'm going to walk you through a traditional relationship trajectory that can lead to this tragic level of disconnection. I want this to be super clear, so I'm going to be using fictional characters. I'm going to go back to Josh and Lucy from the dating app episode, The Gone Fishing, just to paint a picture so that it is super, super clear how this happens. All right, as we have discussed in previous episodes, little boys and girls are traditionally raised with different rules, so to speak. And when boys get hurt or upset, they're taught, don't be such a girl. They're taught to brush it off, to toughen up, reinforcing that it is not acceptable for them to feel hurt or sad, and that doing so will lead to unwanted consequences of maybe invalidation or gaslighting or bullying. Girls, on the other hand, are held and comforted and coddled when they get upset or get hurt, reinforcing to them that it's okay to talk about how they feel, and that in doing so, they will be rewarded with loving attention and compassion. Then during adolescence, confusing hormones and rejection are layered in, and these rules get further ingrained, but often with harsher consequences. Early adulthood can either cement these rules and subsequent behaviors even more, but it's also a time of great individual growth. A young adult may dip a toe out of the patterns they were conditioned with, or they may sink deeper into them, looking for evidence that it is not safe to break out of those traditional roles and cling to them to the point of what we call quote unquote toxic. And I'm not just talking about toxic masculinity, but toxic femininity is a thing too. And a subject for another day, because that'll get us totally off track. But I'm going to paint a picture for you to demonstrate how this goes. And mind you, this is hypothetical, but demonstrates a dynamic I've witnessed many times. So let's say that a young man, again, we're going to use the nickname Josh, is craving real intimacy and desiring a different dynamic than he was brought up to value. And Josh meets Lucy, who is also working to break free from the conditioning that she was brought up with, that she's waiting to be rescued by her prince, or that she should be on the marriage and motherhood track, or conversely, that she is the boss with a capital B and is the hero of her own story. Both Josh and Lucy are meeting each other with some deeply wired conditioning, and also with the desire to grow beyond it, but maybe not quite the tools yet. So they present the very best side of themselves, they hit it off, and over time, trust is established and the walls and the armor start to fall away. During this time, Lucy repeatedly asks Josh to let her in, to show her how he feels, to be vulnerable, scary word, but she wants to know all of him. Now, previously, Josh would get super twitchy at the mere mention of being vulnerable, because all of his past experiences have taught him that opening up and sharing what he really felt on the inside could be used against him in some way. But he's developed this connection with Lucy, who has reassured him that he is safe with her, and he wants so much to feel that safety and to feel seen and heard that he gradually does open up. Josh lets Lucy in, which, as we've talked about previously, may cause Lucy to run, so it is still a risk even though they've been establishing some trust and safety. But in this instance, it actually allows Lucy to let Josh in more, and they end up falling deeply in love and they get married. And Josh is ecstatic to have met his person, his partner, the one he can share all of himself with. And Josh and Lucy live happily ever after. And then babies are born. Now, here's what typically happens when women, and I'm referring to women who want to become mothers. They immediately feel connection with a growing fetus, and that love supersedes any other love that they have ever known. The fetus often will become the focus, and the baby becomes the mother's one true love. Josh is also over the moon, and he and Lucy share in the early pleasures of parenthood. But as we know, the majority of child rearing will fall on Lucy, because women are traditionally more naturally nurturing and empathetic and have access to a wider range of emotional capacity to face the challenges of parenthood. And the man's role is to bring home the paycheck. Now, real quick, I do want to pause here and note that this picture that I am painting is not going to 100% fit every couple or family dynamic. This is for illustrative purposes only. This is from what I have seen working with men in my over 15 years of field work, if you will. It is my theory of where shit goes wrong in relationships to the point of complete disconnection. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. This is meant to be illustrative and your tale of caution. Okay, so where were we? Now, let's say that Josh and Lucy have another kid or two along the way, and while both Josh and Lucy's hearts grow bigger, so does their worry about the next flu strain, or whether or not they're allowing the kids too much screen time, or if they're going to get into the good schools. And their financial stress is also going to grow bigger. Essentially, Josh and Lucy's focus becomes primarily on all things kid and much less about the bond between the two of them. Lucy likely feels the weight of balancing motherhood with her career because women are expected to do it all, and perhaps she feels resentful that Josh doesn't help out at home more. Josh, on the other hand, may want to be home with his family more, but his conditioning has taught him that the way he shows up for his family is by working and earning more. This is where the foundation is beginning to crack, as both Lucy and Josh begin to feel resentful of each other, and therefore less present with each other. If lovingly honest conversations are not had at this point, that crack is going to continue to widen and deepen, with both Lucy and Josh holding on to their resentments and continuing to pull away from each other as a result. Now, here is where the growing disconnection has different effects on the behavior for men versus women. Now, remember, women grow up encouraged to talk about their feelings and seek community and support, including mental health support, and men are taught the opposite. So at this point where Lucy and Josh are both feeling a bit dissatisfied and unfulfilled in the relationship, Lucy is able to turn to her female friends for support. She's more likely to have long conversations with her girlfriends and unload and vent and have the space to do that. And possibly even, they all take turns complaining about their partners. But Lucy is able to get her grievances off of her chest and feel seen and heard and validated. Lucy is also more likely to consider therapy and move forward with finding a therapist and going to regular sessions. However, for Josh, Lucy was his person. It took a lot of time and vulnerability for Josh to feel safe to share his feelings, and Lucy was that person for him. But now, if he is feeling some type of way about his stress or fears or work challenges and tries to talk to Lucy about it, the response he gets is disinterest, irritation, and perhaps even that he is being a burden. I have heard women speaking to each other, complaining about their husbands, and half-jokingly saying things like, "Oh, you mean my fourth child?" And maybe they're joking, but it's also a reflection of how they feel on some level. And so how is that undercurrent likely showing up in the relationship and in the ways that Lucy interacts with Josh? So now Josh doesn't feel like he can talk to the one person he felt safe with. And maybe he doesn't have anyone else he can talk to, like really talk to. Sure, he has guy friends, but they only ever scratch the surface of their deeper challenges because they all grew up with the same conditioning and don't feel comfortable being open about what's really going on. And for Josh to pursue therapy, forget it. So Josh buries how he's feeling, and Lucy turns her focus to the kids. And very quickly, the relationship devolves into a co-parenting roommate type dynamic where Josh and Lucy have obligatory sex once a month and otherwise only talk about the kids' scholastic achievements or who has taken them to soccer or dance or karate, etc. And a lot of couples can continue this way for years. And so that crack becomes a quake and the walls are now shifting. And at some point, Josh feels so invisible in his home that he picks up some habit like drinking or gambling, maybe going to a cuddle service that allows him to be held for a change instead of being the one who has to hold it all together, or paying for sex, something to distract him from how lonely he feels in his own family. And these habits sometimes become full-blown addictions. Sometimes they don't, but even if they don't become addictions, they are still a coping mechanism, a crutch, something to numb what that person is feeling because they don't feel like they have anyone to talk to. So for some, it's substance abuse or gambling. For some, it's having an affair with the man or woman they met at work or through a networking event who spoke to them in a way that they feel seen or even liked or appreciated, which maybe they haven't felt in years at this point. So the emotional affair and eventual sex becomes the numbing agent, that thing that distracts them from their lonely life at home. Taking it a few steps further, some men cope with self-harming practices just to feel something. Some men, and what we have been seeing more and more in the US, act out violently in public because anger and rage are quote-unquote masculine feelings and are therefore acceptable for them to express, and that rage builds up to the point of explosive behavior. And finally, some men, unable to cope with the loneliness and not wanting to feel like a burden, see no other relief than to simply not exist, and they end up taking their own lives. So which of these coping behaviors will it be for Josh? It may not be so extreme, as there are also a great number of men in this situation who simply resign themselves to their circumstances, and everybody in the family just keeps trucking along, miserable but committed until the end of time. All right, that was a lot. Let's take a moment all together to take a couple of deep breaths and let that story go. Because for you, it is just a story. The good news is that this does not have to become your story. Maybe there were parts of Josh and Lucy that triggered you because you've observed elements of that dynamic in the relationships that were modeled for you, or maybe you've seen it among your friends' relationships. If the picture that I painted brought something up for you, take another deep breath. Let it go. Notice what came up for you, what caused you to feel triggered or anxious or even angry. Write it down. Let whatever came up for you spill out onto the page and then read it back. Are there any themes that stand out? Are there any elements that are showing you where your own patterns of behavior might stem from? Write it all out. Now let it go. This does not have to become your story. It's much easier to identify what you do want when you can be clearer about what you do not want, when you can identify with the origins of your own patterning. When you feel activated by something in Josh and Lucy's story, you're getting clearer on what you do not want for yourself. And by getting clearer on what you do not want, it becomes easier to identify what you do want. Instead of saying, I want a partner who makes me laugh and looks good naked, you can be more specific in saying, I want a partner who experiences joy, who connects with my sense of humor and doesn't always take life so seriously. I want a partner who I'm physically attracted to, who takes care of themselves, not only to look good naked, but because doing so allows them to feel healthy and confident, which is very attractive to me. Instead of saying, I want a partner who appreciates me for who I am, you can be more specific in saying, I want a partner who sees and loves the parts of me that I try to hide, that I feel are unlovable. I want a partner who respects me and values my communication, my boundaries, my compassion, my cute notes that I leave in their lunch, or my ability to beat them at Mario Kart. Instead of saying, I want a partner who will make a good mother or father, you can be more specific in saying, I want a partner who will be equally involved in parenthood, who will show up at all the school or sports events, who will stay up until midnight helping with the science project that we only just found out about, who will show our kids how to be a good human through their actions and not just their words, who will model silliness and joy and what healthy love between adults looks like. Now, these are just a few examples, but you get it. You, dear listener, are here because you are a conscious dater and you want to cultivate a relationship that will be rich and juicy and lasting. This is your time to write your own story of how you want it to go, not what you expect it will look like because of all the relationships that were modeled for you or based on your own past experiences, but your story, and then take the aligned actions to make it so. Through private coaching, I guide my clients to get crystal clear on what they want in their ideal partnership. And then I help them build the confidence that they can have it. And then I teach them the skills to attract it and keep it. So what do you want your story to be? If this episode hit home, it's time to stop guessing and start doing. My 90-day private coaching program gives you the tools, guidance, and feedback to overcome your dating gray areas. From clarity to confidence, from your profile to your first date and beyond. Start with a free kickoff call and we will figure out what's keeping you from the connection that you want. The holidays are coming, but this year you could actually enjoy them. Confident, seen, and in control. Click the link below in the show notes and let's get to work.